Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 767. I had the white pieces and start off with knight f3. Opponent went knight f6, and I go g3. So I'm going for a Reti opening, and my opponent obliges by playing the main move here, d5. And now I go c4. This is the Reti gambit. And you can take, but well, white will get the pawn back right away with the queen check or with the development of the knight. So the best moves here involve declining the gambit. So he plays c6. I go bishop g2. And now taking is a viable option here. You see it's one of the top choices. And after black takes, white just plays on in a way pretending he's not down a pawn. Let's see, I'm not even putting pressure. Queen c2 first starts to look at this pawn, and knight a3 as well. And well, knight b6, knight a3. Looks like an interesting struggle will occur from this point. Black is still a pawn down. I think the other way of defending the pawn with the b pawn, I think that's not as good. At least it's not in the opening book, so probably there's ways for white to undermine it. Anyway, I've never gotten to this position. I just wanted to put that on the board to show you how the opening is often played. Most often played, actually. That's the way to take the gambit and try and hold on to the pawn, and that should be okay for black, but well, white has some play for the pawn. Let's see, he goes with knight bd7 right now, and this is a little bit of an inaccuracy. And well, I'm not that familiar with the opening, so I'm not as quick to spot these little inaccuracies, but I'm trying to learn this, so let's investigate this a little bit. If I just take the pawn, yeah, taking the pawn is good here, because the normal response is taking back with the pawn. If he takes with the knight, I can play d4, and it's just a position where I've gained an extra pawn in the center. The material is even. I haven't gained a pawn. I've gained an extra center pawn though, and I can kick that knight away with the e pawn. So they don't take with the knight typically. The main move here is taking with the pawn, and once again d4 is a good move. And this time, well, the material. The pawns in the center is the same. The pawn structure is very symmetrical, but the knight is a little bit misplaced. So this d4 pawn is kind of inhibiting that knight, and so white can play on with some slight edge, and maybe black will waste a tempo trying to get that knight to a good square. Even if it goes here, you can take away its future squares by playing the move b3. So this knight doesn't have such great prospects, whereas your knight is coming out to an active square, putting pressure on the center immediately. And it looks like interesting play. Notice that this knight and this bishop can coordinate against the d5 square. Okay, so let's go back to the game. Like I said, I'm not as familiar with this opening. I don't play it so often, but I'm trying to learn it. Let's see, he goes knight bd7, I go b3. And yeah, we're just out of the opening book at this point. I mean, b3 is a reasonable way to play. It's just that c takes d5 was better and the most accurate way to play the opening. And he gets in the move e5. So now I'm falling back on the typical hypermodern strategy of trying to undermine the center. So d3 to restrain against future pawn pushes. He plays bishop to d6. We go bishop b2, and we both castle. And the chess engine prefers black here. But it's pretty much in the range of about even. It's not like a huge swing one way or the other, but black does have a little more space and control of the center. The only drawback is this knight is still a little bit awkward. He needs to keep it there to defend the pawn, but it's in the way of the bishop. But well, black seems to solve his problems very well. I think black played this game, well, especially considering the difference in rating. It's a 200-point rating difference. I think black really played a good game here. Rook to e8, and I went with d4. d4 is actually a mistake. The chess engine wants to play e4. I don't particularly care for this. Pushes the pawn forward, and then knight to a3. Well, one good thing is that it's given the c4 square for the knight, where the knight can gang up on that e pawn. So there is logic to playing that way. But these pawns locked down my pawns, and both my bishops seem a bit shut out at the moment. So yeah, I wasn't too happy with that line of play. D4 just doesn't work out though, although he didn't find the best way to refute it. So the line played in the game was okay. As the game turned out, in this particular game, it turned out to be okay for me. I don't know what I should do here. If I don't like E4 and I don't like D4, maybe I should develop my pieces and not move any of these pawns. But yeah, I'm not sure where to put them. I guess that's this goes back to move 5 here, when I could have played C takes D5 and given myself a pretty good position. Now I'm just slightly worse in pretty much every variation. Let's see. So I played D4, and he pushed on with E4, which is best according to the engine. I go knight H4, and the engine actually prefers to move knight E1. So you know things have probably gone wrong if knight E1 is your best move. And then he went knight F8, which is a nice move, defending his king side, but also taking away the square from my knight. So you know, I was looking forward. The reason I thought this variation was going to work out well for me was I thought my knight had the option of going to F4, and he's just taken that away. F5. So I played the move F4, and at that point I really get into trouble. F3 here, which I actually thought about, but I couldn't find a way to make it work. I really wanted to play this F3 move, but of course he can try and take advantage of my knight, which has no squares. And well, the reason this works is kind of interesting. So F takes E4, and if he grabs my knight, I have this move E5, forking his two pieces. So that's the way to make this position work for me. But I didn't spot that, and I played the move F4. And now here's Black's chance to really get an advantage. Let's see. I was a little worried about him playing E takes F3 en passant, but this turns out to be okay for me. I still have an extra pawn in the center, although it's a backwards pawn. I still need to develop this knight, but he still needs to develop his bishop. That seems to be okay. But what he could play here, after I play F4, he could have played the move knight to G4. And then that's a pretty annoying move, bringing his knight into this square. And this would have given him a winning edge. I think, let's see, bishop to C1. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's not a win, but it's pretty strong advantage to Black. My pieces are being pushed back. So this combination of, well, D4 and F4 has not been a good line for me. Anyway, fortunately for me, he played G6, just securing control of the F5 square so my knight's not getting in there. And I went with bishop A3. I saw that my bishop was locked out behind this pawn, so I thought I would just trade it off and try and activate my knight, maybe on B5. Let's see, he goes knight to H5. I go rook to C1. Oh, the chess engine, by the way, likes queen A5 best as a way to keep the strongest advantage for Black. We're after rook C1, we're back in the range of about even. Let's see, he goes bishop D7, and that's a good move too. It takes away that B5 square from my knight. So, you know, very heads-up play from my opponent here. Let's see, I went knight C2, bringing this knight into the game. Looking also at this E3 square, which might be useful. And now he plays knight takes F4. And this actually is a bit of, well, it is a mistake, actually, technically speaking. He should just play something simple like F5 and keep an advantage, according to the chess engine. Yeah, I guess it is an advantage. You know, this bishop is going to have trouble getting into the game. I'll probably have to push this pawn forward, move my rook so that my bishop can route around and get into the game. And it's not easy for me to undermine his pawn chain, and he has more space. So that's good. So he spotted this tactical idea, which kind of works. And it's an interesting idea. So sometimes you want to spot these ideas, and it's not losing. It leads to an even position where, well, actually I have a slight edge after that, whereas he's giving up an advantageous position. That's why he probably shouldn't have played it. But well, it's often a good idea to play a tactical move in these blitz games. Sometimes you can confuse your opponent and he won't find the best response. But in this case, I found the right way to deal with this. So my next couple moves, at least, I can be proud of myself, I guess, that I managed to find the right way to refute this. So first of all, taking with the pawn and he takes with the queen is not that great. So taking with the rook is the best way to play this. And then now his idea was to go for the fork. So he gives up his piece for a pawn, but then he gets the piece back with this fork. And so a pretty clever bit of reasoning. And I have to find this move, rook f5. And both those moves were necessary for white to have any kind of advantage here. But the combination of rook takes f4 and rook to f5 is in fact leading to some slight edge to white. So if he takes the rook, then I take back with the knight, getting my knight out of trouble. And he's just given up two pieces for a rook and a pawn, and white is better. That's not enough, and not enough for the two pieces. So he takes the knight, which is correct, and then that allows me to get a pawn back, and I get a center pawn, and he trades this. So we get this position where the material is even, but I've activated my rook, and his pieces are not as active as they were actually. So, well, I don't know if I can say that, but he's sort of improved my position, and so white is doing okay here. So he brings his queen out with queen f6. I went queen d2, which seems to be also a good move. He went bishop to c6, hitting my rook, and right here I missed my best chance to get a winning position. So the best way to play this is with rook to g5 check, which I thought about briefly. I think the problem I was having here was that both of us were getting a little low on time, and yeah, I just didn't want to run into time trouble and calculate some complicated sequence. But the way I played it, queen g5 check, it just leads to an even game, whereas after this I have some kind of edge here. Let's see, he blocks with the knight. I was expecting that, and then I can bring my rook over to harass his queen. He can gain a tempo, kicking my queen this way and momentarily putting this this rook, causing this rook to hang, but the queen can go out to a5 and defend the rook. So it was a complicated sequence to calculate out, and so maybe I wouldn't have found this in time trouble. He went queen d6, hitting this pawn, and let's see, I can trade bishops and then play rook f3. And at this point, it looks like I have good chances to round up this pawn while holding on to this pawn. And yeah, it looks like a winning position for white, according to the chess engine. So anyway, that's best play for white, and that was my best chance in this game to score a win. Anyway, I went for this queen g5 move, which I figured would be a little bit drawish, but I wanted to get a simpler position that I could play in the remaining time. So he declined the queen trade at first, but he needed to block. So I went ahead and took the queens off here, and then played rook e5, thinking I was rounding up this pawn. But well, I didn't think very clearly there, because this pawn is still defended, and my pawn is a little bit hard to defend. So I have to scramble here to find a way to avoid losing material. But because he immediately attacks that pawn with rook e8. But this knight b4 move allows me to maintain material equality. So he takes here, I take here, and we get to this position where it's 4 pawns versus 4 pawns, and bishop and rook versus bishop and knight, and it's a pretty even endgame. Let's go forward to the next critical move. I don't want to take too much time. I played a little quickly there, and those weren't the best moves. I'm allowing his knight to get active. Let's see. I was actually a little worried about this move during the game, but of course that doesn't work at all because b4 there forks the two pieces, so he can't really hop in there. Let's see, he played f5 first, and I went with g4. So g4 is where it goes downhill. If I just played e3, then it stays about even. Let's see, he can go, yeah. So e3 takes away this knight d4 move, which he played in the game. And as I explained before, knight c3 can't be played because of the b4 fork. So I'm kind of keeping his knight out of the game. I still have to move my king around and get the bishop into the game. But it looks like I can hold this position. So an even position here. g4 leads to something where actually he has one winning shot. Well, I make one more mistake before it gets to that. He plays knight d4 here, going after my pawns. He's forking the two of them. Let's see, I grab a pawn here. He grabs, it just takes back, and then I bring my king to defend the e-pawn. I figured that was a little more important, although I'm losing 2 pawns over here. And then I play king to e3, which is correct. He grabs another pawn. And then right here, I need to play king to f4. And so even though I'm down 2 pawns, this looks like a position I can still hold. I'm attacking this pawn. Say plays rook a5 to defend it. I play e3. And it looks like I can bring my bishop around to put pressure on the f-pawn. In any case, the chess engine does not find a win for black here. It gives black an advantage, of course, but looks like this is a position which is still something that can be held. After bishop h3, this is black's best chance to get a winning position, but there's only one move, and the move is knight to d4. So use the knight to defend the pawn, and yeah, it's a little bit tricky. Where's the bishop go now? If I try to bring my king in to put more pressure on this pawn, this my e-pawn goes with check, so I don't want to do that. Yeah, it's just hard for me to make progress. I mean, the chess engine gives bishop g2 and king to f6 is a logical continuation there. And black, with careful play, might go on to win. But he played instead, I was thinking maybe king to g6, holding onto the pawn this way, would be a good move, but turns out I can activate my rook after this and then bring it to the d file, eliminating this knight d4, and this pawn is still hanging. So it looks like I have enough activity with my pieces to keep them from making progress in these lines. So the chess engine once again didn't find a win for black there. But after bishop to h3, knight d4 is winning. But he played knight back to c5. And after I take the pawn, it's just a draw. And it stays a draw the rest of the way. So I'll just step through the rest of the moves. I don't think there was any other moment where either of us had a chance. It was kind of an interesting end game to play out. But when both sides have passed pawns like this in a rook and pawn endgame, it's almost always a draw. And one idea, as I was saying, is that, okay, that's how it ended. But if we back up a little bit, one idea is actually to sacrifice the rook here and then force him to give up the rook to get this pawn back. So there's different ways to turn this into a draw, but he chose to turn it into a draw himself by playing rook e1. So I take this pawn, he takes this pawn, and then I go king d8 and offer the draw, and he accepted. I shouldn't say he chose to turn it into a draw. It was a draw regardless of what he played there. So he missed his chance back on move 36. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.